Our next speaker, for our next speaker, we're going to connect our program today directly to London. Iemand zei London is calling, en dat is oprecht zo. Because our next speaker and guest really needs no introduction. He's one of the pioneers who has contributed to really putting impact investing on the global map. He's an international philanthropist, venture capitalist. He's a social innovator and the co-founder and president of the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment. And if I'm not mistaken, we should have a live connection with him right now from London. So let's see if we have Sir Ronald Cohen on the line with us. And yes, there he is. I don't know if you can hear it, Sir Ronald, but there's a big round of applause here, you live from Amsterdam. We're so happy to have you here with us at the National Conference on Broad Prosperity. Sir Ronald, if I can start, I mean, you've dedicated decades to really reshaping the way that markets value not just financial return, but social impact, environmental impact. So from that experience background, I was actually really curious to hear from you in these sort of like complex, I dare say, and polarized times sometimes also. I was curious to hear from you. Are you personally still optimistic about our ability to achieve broad-based prosperity? Oh. We'd have to...
Thank you, yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Hajar. Thank you all for your warm welcome. It's a great pleasure to be joining you today for what is a very important subject of discussion, really, on which the future of our society and our planet hangs. And the answer to your question, Hajar, is I am more certain than ever that we are already into a transition, into a paradigm shift to impact economies that optimize risk, return, and impact, that align the incentives that have driven capitalism, the economic incentives that have driven capitalism to take billions out of poverty, to align them now with our moral, social, and environmental incentives. And that's what the world needs today if we are to tackle the change in climate patterns that we witness and the lack of cohesion in our societies, which has been driven by huge economic gaps between rich and poor.
Right.
We are facing, I'll just continue for a moment, Hajar.
Yeah, go ahead. Feel free to.
With your permission. We are facing an ideological headwind now, which has to do with the fact, and the previous speaker put it on his slide, that the world, in the view of many administrations across the world today, the world should be focusing on making money. And the impact thesis is about making money, which is what makes me optimistic. It's about aligning risk, resilience, and value creation. If you ignore impacts, if you ignore environmental impacts, you do so at your peril,
right,
as a business and as an investor.
Yeah, you're saying there's a financial business case to be made indeed to make sure that you don't overlook that positive impact that is so fundamental to have in there. I want to actually zoom into something you said, Sir Ronald, because indeed you touched about, I think, one of the most persisting tendencies which we see in the financial world and finance, which is this over-focus on risk and return as metrics to base decisions off on. As I said, you're one of the pioneers in really leading that movement on impact investing. And you mentioned this so-called risk-return impact paradigm. So basically, the entire movement of people that are saying there's a third dimension that needs to be included, which is impact, as you just said. Can you maybe make a bit more vivid and concrete for us what some of the most significant changes then are that you're seeing in the field of this risk-return impact space? Any significant changes concretely that you see, and also perhaps what their implications would be for investors and governments is very interesting, I think, for the people here in the room also to know.
If you look at the major trends in the world today, over the past couple of decades and looking ahead, the first obvious trend is young people think differently. Their consumer preferences, their preferences as talent are to be involved with companies that do good and do well at the same time, rather than companies that make huge profits, pollute the atmosphere, and create social tension, right? That means that there is an economic incentive in going with consumer preferences which are going in the direction of impact. Secondly, you may deny the cause of the change in climate patterns, but you cannot deny the change itself. Insurance companies will tell you that the change is real and they're having to adjust their risk premium the cost of insurance policies, and sometimes withhold insurance completely, as is happening in California. These two trends together make it wise, if you're a good investor or a good business leader, to take impact into account. And I believe that business leaders and investment leaders recognize this. And what we see now is a change in the political cycle, which is going against this type of thinking.
Right.
But the trend is going in the right direction. The trend is going in the direction of countries taxing carbon. 25 countries in the world tax carbon. If you don't take into account the possibility that there are going to be taxes imposed in your own country on carbon, you'll make the wrong investment decisions, because the companies that pollute the most will pay the most tax.
Right. But Sir Ronald, forgive me for interrupting, but wouldn't it also be logical to say that this sort of like opposing political cycle that we see may actually sort of create a decline of the types of changes that we need if we want to make sure that broad prosperity and impact in that sense is taken into account? Because that's, I think, the worry of a lot of people.
I think the political cycle is difficult to predict. We've seen liberalism, in some senses, go so far as to become intolerant, and people are reacting to that, and so we have a swing in the direction of right-wing thinking, less concerned with human impact, with minority rights, and so on and so forth. However, the paradigm shift doesn't need to be caused by the political cycle. The paradigm shift is coming from investors and consumers today. And watershed has been reached now with the arrival of impact accounting, which enables us to value in monetary terms the environmental and social impacts of companies, which we can now do, and soon, hopefully, we'll be able to do with the help of the screens of the big data providers within the next few months. Is my hope. So, Hajar, the watershed is coming because investors want to make the right business decisions. And when they shift from one company to another, because of the risk of negative impacts, they change the valuation of companies. That uses markets which have understood impact better than governments and philanthropists, right? We have $2 trillion of impact investment in the world today, including a new category of sustainability-linked bonds and loans. The previous speaker was referring to a lower cost of capital for companies that achieve environmental or social goals. So markets have understood this change. And it is markets that are going to bring the paradigm shift.
So you're basically saying, if I may interrupt there, Sir Ronald, so you're saying it transcends the apolitical cycle. The watershed has already happened, so the ball's sort of rolling past the tipping point. You're seeing, that's also a staggering number of impact investments that you mentioned. Still, though, if we look at them, it is true that we see more capital being allocated towards impact, but not yet at the speed or skill that we need. So if I could just zoom in on that bit, what would you say is needed needed for us to sort of, in terms of action collectively as a movement, make sure that we accelerate the mobilization of capital for impact even further?
So each of one has a role to play in this impact revolution. The Netherlands have led in the impact investment field. Your big pension funds have been the world leaders in making asset allocations initially to ESG and now to impact. Investors are the most powerful lever together with consumers to make this happen. Mm-hmm. The second is, as business leaders, we have to measure impact now. We have to measure it in monetary terms. We have to understand the implications on the valuation of our companies. We have to go with consumer preferences and investor preferences to maximize value. That's why impact is really aligning risk, resilience, and value creation. All right? Mm-hmm. This is our mantra in today's changed environment. Risk, resilience, and value creation is the same as risk, return, and impact. Right?
Yeah.
The third is as consumers. We all see it in our children's behavior. My children buy using an app called Jacka, which you may have come across because it's used by 40 million people across the world today. You scan the barcode of a product, it tells you whether it's good for you, whether it's better than other products, whether there are cheaper alternatives. It will soon tell you, hopefully, whether the company providing it is polluting more or polluting less, whether it's using child labor or not. And then, as government officials, measuring impacts is fundamental to effective spending by government at a time when governments are cash-strapped. You have to begin to set outcomes, desired outcomes, and pay according to them. The UK government has just launched the £1 billion Outcomes Fund to deal with children's issues. The UK government, like many governments across the world, is cash-strapped. And if it wants to achieve its social agenda, it has to attract investment capital, impact investment. And this impact investment can be brought to achieve government priorities, social and environmental, right, by paying for the outcomes when they have been achieved. So if the UK government is launching a £1 billion fund, half from central government, half from matching from local authorities, then other countries should be doing the same thing. And so with this focus on measuring outcomes, not only through the investment world and the business world, but through the government world, we will use our money more effectively, and we will align the incentives, the economic incentives, with the social and environmental ones.
Right, right. So Ronald, if I then take all of that into account, because you do really paint an optimistic imagery also of the potential that movement can sort of bring forward. I wanna just contrast it a little bit with how we started this day off, because when we kicked off during the introduction, we did a couple of questions in the room just to see what the sentiment is. And at some point, we went through the room and we asked whether people feel like impact is being rewarded by the market currently. And almost everyone, if not everyone, felt like it was not sufficiently being done right now. That's really what today is also centered about, that question about how can you make sure that transparency also leads to transactions. So in other words, how can we make sure that positive impact and the showcasing of that also is actually rewarded in the market, in businesses, by governments, by policy. So basically, I want to ask you the $1 million question, which is, how can we make sure that transparency actually leads to transaction?
Well, first, I think we have to step back and analyze your basic premise, which is that markets are not rewarding impact. Look at Tesla. Could Tesla have become a $1 trillion company by launching another combustion engine car? Very simple, no. Only because of the environmental dimension was it able to steal a march on the rest of the automobile industry. Right? This is going to happen in every area. It's going to happen in the area of education. It's going to happen in the area of health. It's going to happen in the area of using artificial intelligence to help hospitals recover payments from insurance companies and so on.
Yeah.
Optimizing risk-return impact is the way to deliver higher profits today. However, the world, and I come from the world of investments like many people in the room, as you know, the world does not shift its paradigm in a smooth way. When venture capital was invested, people didn't believe invented, which I'm proud to have been involved in. People didn't believe it would work. They didn't believe technology would change anything. When the first PC came out, people said it's only going to change the computer industry. Right? Same is happening with impact now. And if you look at what's happening to clean energy, does anybody in the room believe that fossil fuels are going to be the cheapest form of fuel? No.
I see some affirmative shaking heads.
So I have to take you. Sorry?
No, sorry, I was just saying there were some affirmative shaking heads indeed when you asked that. But please go ahead.
Okay. So the answer is that the trend is going to be to optimizing risk, return, and impact, because governments, when they have transparency through impact accounting, will begin to strengthen the incentives through tax credits and through taxation for companies to do the right thing. And it doesn't matter whether you believe in climate change. I want to emphasize that. All it matters is that you recognize that there are changes in climate patterns, and that if you ignore them, your supply chains are going to get disrupted, and you're not going to be able to supply products, for example.
Yeah, that's a really solid point, right? Indeed, that we can sort of like do this entire wiggle around whether we believe it or not, but sooner or later the impacts will be felt enough, and they're already being felt. So indeed, that's something that we cannot escape. Sir Ronald, I want to thank you so much for sharing those insights with us already. But if we may borrow you for just a couple more minutes, I was actually curious to see if there are any questions here in the room in Amsterdam for you on the basis of what you said. And on that note, there's one that immediately pops into the air. Hi, could you maybe share who you are quickly?
I have a question, Ronnie Marcello Palazzi from Bilabio. Hi, Ronnie. One question.
Hi, Marcello.
You talk about investors, you talk about consumers, you talk about government officials, but I would also like to talk about the leaders, the entrepreneurs who are running these companies. You know, there are 350 million companies in the world, and some, you know, like B Corps and GRI and other movements, SDGs. So it's also up to us. You know, I'm an entrepreneur, and many here are entrepreneurs. So the leadership and the courage that we need to take to make this transition. So maybe you have a word or comment about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Anyone, Marcello, thank you for reminding me of that. Anyone who's read my book, Impact, by the way, the second edition is just being published now with an additional chapter on impact economies, society, and capitalism. Anybody who's read my book knows that I put entrepreneurs at the center of this revolution, in the leadership of this revolution, because technology is meeting impact today to transform the way in which we educate, in which we look after our health, and in every other possible way. So thank you for emphasizing that, Marcello.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I think I want to recognize Marcello's role in the area of impact measurement through the B Corp movement. And I want to say that building on what Marcello and the B Corp movement have done, we now have impact valuation. We don't need to go to the criteria we used to have to go to identify the impacts of a company. We can measure them in monetary terms. Right. And the merger of a Dutch charitable organization, the Capitals Coalition, with the International Foundation for Valuing Impact, means that Holland will actually be playing a major role now in the pursuit of impact accounting.
Thank you so much. That's very kind also of you to acknowledge. We have one more question for you, Sir Ronald, right here in the room, so I'd love to hand over to...
My name is John.
Oh, is it on?
Hello? Yeah. Hi, Sir Ronald. My name is John Blackett. I've got a question on your view of one of the most valuable companies currently in the world, NVIDIA. And you said that investors have a huge role to play in how they view this new paradigm. Now, if I take NVIDIA as an example, what's your view on whether they are a responsible company and whether they are really providing the impact beyond just financial measures?
So, the problem isn't with the advancement of science. The problem is with the use human beings make of it. There's no doubt that the NVIDIA chip provides us with a very powerful tool to better humanity or to worsen humanity. The responsibility is not NVIDIA's for bringing scientific progress which can create good and harm. The responsibility is ours to make sure that we regulate in a way that we didn't with social media, so as to preserve the values of our society and continue to support human progress.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you also for the questions. We want to thank you so much from Amsterdam Live here, Sir Ronald. Thank you so much for calling in and sharing those insights. A big round of applause indeed for you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.